And I'll share the desktop here. Okay. Oh. Let's take it from the top. So the purpose for this is to provide an orientation to new volunteers coming in.
Okay.
You've been on the roster for quite some time, so I'm happy to finally get you into this space. So just so you know a little bit more about me. So my name is Andrew Wilson. I'm the founder of Doctors for Doctors and Nurses for Nurses. And really what I'd like to do today is really take you through how it started, what our current culture is and what our current structure is, and essentially where it's going as well. So if you have any questions about where it's going, what the vision is, that kind of stuff, definitely feel free to ask.
Okay.
And we will have people joining us online again. So a little bit more about me. I did an undergrad out in Vancouver. I'm actually from the small town of Huntsville, Ontario.
Yes.
If you know it. Yeah. And then, yeah, I love it there. So I did an undergrad in kinetics, and then I came out here and did 4 years of chiropractic college after that in Toronto. And during that time when I was in first year was when I started Doctors for Doctors, and when ideas started to kind of formulate and get put into more tangible things. Okay. After that, now I work as a chiropractor. Right after school, though, I went to Tanzania for 3 months to work with a charity called Global Peace Network. And I did a bunch of work there with a medical team in rural Tanzania, and set up basically a health center, and worked with a number of nurses and doctors there. That was very interesting and really, really good work. I really liked what I did there. And then I went to Botswana afterwards as well for 3 months with a separate charity called World Spine Care. I was actually supposed to be in Botswana for a year. It didn't work out for a number of reasons, but one of the things that I learned was, aside from a little bit of what not to do, was how charities operate in different countries, and essentially the different effects that they have on local populations with respect to what they take and what they give. And that is something that I continually look at the lens of Doctors for Doctors and Nurses for Nurses through, is what are we taking from people in Canada? What are we taking from people in Nicaragua? And what are we giving to people in Canada? What are we giving to people in Nicaragua? And if those ever balance, or should I even say, if those ever are much lower, like if taking is higher than giving, then we're definitely doing it wrong. And so throughout the time, there's been areas where like taking has been high and giving has been low, and we have to reassess that and flip back. And so that's the kind of lens that I come from and the lens that I look through with it now. And that's a good part of my role, I would say, as well.
Okay.
But now I work as a chiropractor 3 days a week in Bolton. And then I'm starting a full-time job here in Toronto. So I'll be handing it off and working full-time here. And hopefully in the future, some type of higher level research out of Nicaragua in public health or international development is kind of in my cards. So to take you through a little bit of history about Doctors for Doctors and Nurses for Nurses, back in 2008, when I first went to Nicaragua, the woman here in the photo her name is Maria. She's a really great physiotherapist, graduated in Nicaragua, works in rural populations, particularly for kids with disabilities. A lot of children that had minor disabilities, they ended up becoming major disabilities because families didn't have the knowledge or the resource to effectively deal with those. So, for example, when I was walking with Maria one time, we walked out to a community way on top of a hill. It took about 2 hours from the nearest road. And this was during the dry season, so it was a little bit easier access and that kind of thing. But the family had a blind child. And, that's not as severe as a disability in our culture and in our society, because we have things built that can support blind populations. However, like in this community, they didn't really have the resources to support it, to support their son. And so Maria had to come in and say, like, listen, he needs to learn how to walk, and you need to help develop his muscles and his leg muscles and his arm muscles. But they never wanted to teach him how to walk because they were afraid that because he's blind, he would walk, he would, hurt himself or get himself into trouble. And she was like, no, like this is really important, and had to explain why and this kind of thing. So that was the type of work that she did, and I got to travel with her and see that. And it was very inspirational for me. And although I wasn't able to help much, I was more just an observer at that point. Yeah. Fast forward 2 years to 2010, I went back. This was right after my degree in Vancouver. I stayed with Maria and her family for 3 weeks and did some more traveling with her. I had, right before that trip, donated a machine that she had always wanted. It was an electrical stimulation machine. You could see her using it in the last picture there. Yeah. And it just helps stimulate nerves and muscles for different things that she was trying to develop in the children she was working with. So I stayed with her and her family. And it was then that I actually met her oldest daughter, Helena. And Helena was a very smart, talented young woman who wanted to, at the time, go to medical school to help her community. And her community didn't have access to healthcare. Didn't have good access to healthcare or consistent access to healthcare. And so I thought, what an obvious positive thing for us to be a part of and support. And so from there, I essentially came home in 2010. I had just started chiropractic college and I was in my first year. And what I did was collect a group of 30 people, shared the story. There was a lot of kind of mutual interest and support, and we ran a half marathon together, and we fundraised about $9,000. It was the first money that the program ever had, because I thought it should have a website. I tried to build a website, and because I thought, we should do an event, like I tried to do events. I was doing all of these major categories that we have now. We have people that are like very high level professionals in every major category. I was trying to do all of them, and I would say I probably did them all at like a 5% capacity, just because, I was also in school and all this stuff. So it was terrible, but it worked somehow. And with that, we had our initial funding, and once Helena graduated high school, that we would support her into medicine. One of the more interesting things, and kind of the program actually went on pause for about a year and a half, because Helena could not actually get into medical school, and she got really discouraged because she couldn't get into the public medical school, which is UNAN, which is spelled UNAN. And that school is in Managua, the big city. So if we're looking on the map there, if you know it well, that's where everybody flies into when they go into Nicaragua. So she couldn't get into UNAN. And she got very discouraged and decided to take the route that many, many young, smart Nicaraguans take, which is the route of tourism, travel, English, that kind of stuff, because it is a very big money generator for Nicaragua. And I think they're kind of doing they're templating a little bit of what Costa Rica did to gain in GDP. So, and I think it's being quite successful for them so far. And I think I talk with Helena still on Facebook, and her English is coming along really well, and she's doing well in the industry. But long and behold, we had money for a doctor from a rural community to go to a medical school to give back healthcare to a community that didn't have access to healthcare. And what I decided to do was work with a local partner on the ground in San Juan del Sur, which is it's right there on the map. It's on the lower southwest border of the country, really, in Rivas. There's a local partner operating out of there, and the surrounding catchment area was full of different, little pockets of rural communities without access to healthcare. And what we did was open up an application, and we just said, hey, this is what the scholarship is all about. Apply if you want to come in and do this for yourself and for your community and for your family. And we got 15 applicants, I believe. And it was kind of then that the idea and the paradigm started to shift, because before that, well, I mean, way before that, I wasn't even sure. Originally, when I was just trying to help a friend, when I was trying to just help Helena, I wasn't sure what programs already existed out there. When I found out Helena couldn't go, the first thing I did was look to see if I could just dump the money off at a program that ran something similar, because that's what I had promised it would go to. And after a long time, I found that there wasn't anything doing this, like, relatively, I thought, like, simple idea. And I still think it's a really simple idea. There just wasn't anyone doing it. And I saw two major camps of charities. There was a camp focused towards education of anything, but very rarely was that tied into healthcare in any capacity. And then there was another camp towards more like emergency relief healthcare. So more like kind of more of like the MSF model, like the foreign injection of medical professionals to support different things, and target an area, fix it, and leave.
After the borders.
And so what I wanted to see was a little bit more of a sustainable approach, an empowerment of the different communities and of the different people. And that's where the idea came from. Now, when I had 15 applicants, I started to see that this problem wasn't like, when I met Helena and she wanted to go to medical school because, no one in our community had access to healthcare, that problem wasn't a unique one.
Right.
And from there, the paradigm started to shift, and I started to see how, like, different cycles of poverty in rural communities are just driven by wasted potential. And there was a lot of really smart, really talented youth that just wanted a shot at, saving a lot of lives. And I was like, well, that's a good way to spend money.
Seriously.
So, so from there, we ended up interviewing about the top, I think it was the top 10 applicants. And from that, we chose Brian. And this is Brian here at the time of his acceptance. He's a young guy. These kids are coming out of high school. They are around 18, 19 when they finish, and that's when they enter medical school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so and that's the way it is in most countries outside of North America.
Oh, okay.
So it's a system that works, and then they have 5 years of medical school after, and then I think depending on the school, 2 or 3 years of residency, and it depends on the specialty too. But after that, but that one's paid. So what we need to do is support them for the 5 years of medical school. Within in-house in Nicaragua. Now, Brian had come to us. He had already been accepted into medical school, wasn't able to go unless, basically unless he had a full scholarship to support it. There was even concerns around how initially he worked about 7 hours a day on top of going to school. And, his grades weren't perfect, but, he also supported his family and his single mom and his 2 sisters, and he did a lot of work on the farm. And so with that came the understanding that, if he was going to become and really challenge himself and become a medical doctor, that he would be fantastic.
Yeah. And
so we decided to go with Brian. He really understood the different issues in his area. So things, especially how, if a senior has less mobility, that they essentially have zero access to medical attention because you have to be able to walk to get to the clinic, to be able to see a doctor. So that's a very obvious understanding around how age affects ability to access healthcare. There's a whole bunch of other social determinants of health that he expressed, that he kind of that he was able to give examples for in his community. And we challenged him on possible solutions to that. And he had some good ideas. Some of the stuff didn't really make sense, but he wasn't a medical doctor yet, so that's okay. And so we decided to sponsor him. So the full scholarship was around 25,000 Canadian dollars for 5 years. And that covers everything involved, including even supporting the local partners, the Foundation of Jean Brugger. They're the local partners in San Juan del Sur. That even includes supporting them with that as well. And they charge 10% for administration fees, which is probably the best 10% I've ever spent, because they do a lot of work for us. And it's also because we're taking these young people from rural communities, and we're putting them in, the big city or areas where, they've rarely traveled to. There's a little bit of a social shock as well. And there's also, they just check in, they make sure everything's okay with them, with their families, that they're fitting in well, that they're happy emotionally and socially and spiritually. So it's really important to have that local perspective.
Right.
And so that's how we accepted Brian. After that, we communicate by letter every once in a while, but now because of Facebook, we always just type messages on Facebook, and I see photos of him at school and all this kind of stuff. So it's very fun to communicate with him. And this was one of the first letters he sent to us that was just a complete game changer for me in terms of inspiration.
Absolutely.
And it was part of me seeing it as the bigger problem when he really was able to articulate how it affected him and his family.
Okay.
And he's the first person to ever go to school after high school in his family. And so this was like a really big deal for his family and also for his community. And I started to see, when I went there in July 2014, how it affected his sisters, and how his sisters were now a lot more inspired to actually do well in school because maybe they could do something with it afterwards. And so it was really beautiful to see that level of inspiration. And so that was when I first met Brian in person.
Okay.
In 2014.
Okay.
And he was in his, I believe, second year of medical school at that time. Yeah. Now he's just entering his fourth in March this year. But he's doing really well.
That's great.
And this is UCAN, which is it's a private medical school. Okay. And it is in Lyon. So it's up a little bit from Managua there. Yeah. And so he's doing really well in medical school. We got to go and kind of embarrass him a little bit, but hopefully not too much. Take some photos with him. And it was there that he actually sat in on a meeting with us in the school, and we expressed what we were doing and what we were trying to build, and why Brian was really important and why he was different from the other medical students that they had. Because a private medical school in Nicaragua, only the people have enough money to can go typically. You can't take out loans to just show up. And we expressed why this program was different and important, and they really felt the way, and this was one of their priorities for a long time. They just haven't come up with the same solution, so they were excited to hear more. We worked out a deal where as Doctors for Doctors and Nurses for Nurses send students to their programs, to their medical program, that they give 20% off of tuition so we can sponsor more students to push them through to rural communities, because that's such an area of lack of access that they know as well. So that was really powerful just for us to be there with Brian and with the administrators of the school and to work that out.
And is the medical curriculum in English or Spanish?
All Spanish.
All Spanish,
yeah.
Okay. So it's not a requirement that they are bilingual for admittance? Okay.
No, they do take English. Yeah. Particularly because a lot of information in medicine is also in English. Yeah. But it's, I think they take it once and it's in first year or something like that. Or maybe it's one course, but they take it every year. But it's not, their medical program is not in English. Like I know their textbooks are fully Spanish. And their classes are in full Spanish. Okay. And even when I went there originally, we were comparing anatomical terms, because they're all Latin based. So they're really similar. Right. But it's just got like a Spanish or like an English tinge to it. So we were comparing stuff and pointing to it on the cadavers, and it was fun.
When did you become fluent in Spanish?
So I'm not fluent in Spanish.
Okay.
Fluency is something that needs to be very well practiced. And I would say if fluency is a 10, I'm probably sitting at like a 5 right now, maybe a 6.
So you started learning to speak Spanish when you were visiting the Maria? Is that when you started to speak Spanish? Okay.
Yeah, when I started to kind of know that this was going to be really important. Yeah. Okay. And then when, as Doctors for Doctors and Nurses for Nurses became bigger, and we started to have these bigger kind of dreams about how many people we could help and support, that was when it became like a really high priority for me, just because in my position and my role, it's really important. So after that trip in 2014, we came back. We had a really successful crowdfunding campaign. We fundraised by the end of the day, it was around $21,000, which was really exciting. It allowed us to sponsor our next student, Kimberly. That's our second student there. She is a little bit less of a rural community, so she's from a bigger of a town.
Okay.
She understood the social determinants of health, and her volunteer history and her leadership was really impressive. She's still, like, when she sends me a letter, I'm still like, my jaw just drops. She inspired her family to volunteer all the time, and they're doing stuff. She was doing research. She was doing research in collaboration with some workers from University of Toronto on kidney disease in Nicaragua, which was a big thing that came out recently.
Right.
She was one of the people on the ground, like, doing that research. So just very ultra impressive. Still finds time to volunteer at all these different rural communities. And she's the issues that she really wants to support in different rural communities in Nicaragua. And she wouldn't have been able to continue on in medical without that financial support. So this was one of those clear cases where, because we are empowering future leaders in medicine, Nicaragua was an easy decision for us, and it was we were more than happy to support her. So she's doing really well now. She's in her third year.
Oh, wow.
Her grades are insane, and her volunteer experience is insane. And
awesome.
she works a lot.
Yeah.
Now, those are the medical scholarship program.
Okay.
Another thing that we're running right now, this is more of a trial. We're doing a health program. And this is, it's kind of a different way to increase health in rural communities, but it's through nation and broadcasting. So we have a nurse, a local nurse that we pay to run the radio program that's going to be set for, hopefully 2016. Keep age just because of different, like, local, different things that they local, so like a different type of computer like that for the radio show or for the broadcasting system. In rural Nicaragua, radio is super hot.
I can imagine.
It's really important because I would say everybody has a radio, and it's kind of used as this PA system slash. It's like an information system slash PA system.
Okay.
Almost. So there's a lot of announcements. There's a lot of very culturally relevant things, deaths in the community, births in the community. Like, like, my son's returned home, like, we're throwing a party,
Right.
like, come by anytime on Saturday. That's like a thing that you could hear on one of these programs. So people are listening for sure, especially particularly in the rural communities. And what we've done is it's managed by a nurse who is going to be collecting information on people who have questions about different specialties in medicine. So things like child nutrition, or, maternal health, or these types of things. She's going to be collecting questions and information and bringing in specialists to answer those questions and create a talk show once a week. For 3 months is the initial trial period, but we're going to be recording the episodes, analyzing the data, that kind of thing. So we're really just still getting all of the groundwork laid out, but they have the radio tower, they have all the equipment. There's just a hiccups that we're sorting out where we could go on. And to this, we actually got awarded our first two grants. They were small grants, but you got to start small in the granting world.
Of course.
So that was really, that's a really positive thing for us as well. Also, it allows us to map out where the major issues are in the surrounding 100-kilometer diameter.
Okay.
And basically where to go next. The radio health station is actually up in Esquipulas in Metagalpa, which is right there.
Oh,
so it's a little bit more towards the, like, inland, rural, mountainous region where access to healthcare basically plummets.
Right.
So it's a really important step for us to take in the right direction.
Yeah.
So just a quick chat here about our values and our culture. One of the biggest things about us that we spend a lot of time working out, and I know it's kind of bare bones, but our mission is basically to promote and support local healthcare in Nicaragua. particularly surrounding communities with poor access to healthcare. That's simple of what we. Really, the vision is we live in a space really and who deserve the school and to become and professionals in their communities. They have to be able to do that, to create and save, basically, to save a lot of lives. It's the long-term benefit of graduating a doctor that pay off in ways that are almost immeasurable.
Right.
And a leader in a community that didn't really have a voice in the past.
Right.
Now we hope a day where we have so many medical doctors that are from rural communities that they can actually stand up together and advocate for more support or more help, or talk about some of the main issues that need to be addressed with very little funding, but it's just because nobody knew about them before.
Right.
And so we want to work with these doctors for a long time to come, and that's very well understood as we're bringing them on. Who we are as an organization, culturally, volunteers, who we're attracting. The terms that we always use are low and solutions oriented. So things are typically very direct. That's the most efficient way to do it. However, it's very okay to make mistakes. It's very okay to those. And in every level of our organization, and even I can think of funny board meetings where I've said that was just it just didn't really make sense, and I got called out on it, and I was like, you're right. I'm sorry. And that was it. And that's the low drama and solutions oriented part, where what we're doing is bigger than us, and the sacrifice of the 10% of embarrassment is well worth the 90% gain in efficiency and effectiveness for the rest of the team. And as well, there's the time wasting piece, because we're all volunteers and we are all professionals in a lot of different capacities. We need to be very efficient with our time and very respectful of that. And this is the best way for us to attract and keep really good people that work with us. As well, one of the other main things that I always really like to talk about is within our culture and our structure, we really believe that supporting local everything as much as possible is really important. So I get a lot of questions on, well, isn't the medical education better in Canada? Shouldn't you be graduating Nicaraguans in medical school in Canada?
Okay.
My argument is taking someone out of their context and teaching them medicine in Canada is very different than keeping them within their context and teaching them relevant medicine to them there. So from what I know, and even through my schooling, my understanding of malaria is nowhere near as good as a doctor from Nicaragua.
Right.
And that's because malaria is actually a thing in Nicaragua, so they go through it more thoroughly and they're tested on it more thoroughly. Versus here, it's not really a big thing. It's a couple of multiple choice questions and then you're done and you never have to think about it again.
Right.
And so that's 1 out of 20 really important reasons that it's really important to keep these kids and these doctors in Nicaragua as much as possible so that they can support their communities. And it's a lot of developing ties and networks and mentors, actually connecting them with people who are just really good doctors in Nicaragua as well is really important for us. And so that's support local as much as possible. The more people we're paying locally, the better. Whenever we have money and we're thinking of paying someone here, my question is always, can we pay someone in Nicaragua to do it instead? And I think that's just a really important way that charities often accidentally end up taking more than they give. And this is a check and a balance for us. And that's why I have this conversation here. Another really important one is within our structure, the people who are most involved in our organization are always the people who have the most power in our organization. So the people who do the most work are the people who also make the most choices.
Right.
And that just makes sense structurally. A lot of different organizations, that's often not the case. Board of directors typically almost isn't allowed to make certain decisions, and almost not allowed to do a certain level of the work, a certain amount of the work, which creates a really big kind of dichotomy between the people who have all the power and don't do a lot of the work, and the people who do all the work and have none of the power. And it's whenever you have people who don't understand the implications of the decisions that they're making, it's probably not a good thing. And so with that, we have very much on purpose built the structure where people who want to do more in our organization always end up getting more power to make decisions over their own kind of domain and realm. And that's exactly how Anna, who you're going to be working with in data, that's exactly how she was put into the organization. Same with Bo. Bo just came in kind of similar to yourself and then just kept showing up and then built a whole side. And it was really impressive. And he keeps showing up and it's amazing. And he's a volunteer just like us. And so, you know, he has a lot of control and a lot of vision for what he wants to see and what he wants to build. And he's just doing it.
That's awesome.
And we trust him because he's continually proving himself all the time. It's great. And so that's another important piece as well. Any other questions about
no
that kind of stuff? Okay.
Yeah.
That covered most of it for sure. So what we see and what we would like everything to look like is in person. We have events and meetups probably around once a month. I was actually going to say, I know you're from London.
Yeah, but it's pretty easy. I usually come to Toronto once a month.
There's there's a Wednesday that there's a whole group that meets up and talks about like data analysis and how to display data and like all this kind of really important stuff. Stuff that I don't know all too much about, but I'm definitely going to find out more. But it's in February. Just remind me to give you the date before.
Because Wednesdays can be hard, but I have enough friends and it can be made feasible. Yeah.
And that's something that I was just talking to Anna about, and we're going to go this month. That's just a small example though, but different events, different things. Like one time we all went out salsa dancing and ate breakfast together at a really cool Latin brunch place. Different things like that that are just important for culture and free flow of ideas. I often find the best ideas come out of those, which
definitely.
is funny. As well, something that I am very excited about continually for some reason, they're called TAO, or Tear Apart the Organization. Now with these, what we do is essentially, I like to take a step back a couple of times a year, and I like to say, what are all the things that completely suck about this, the way that we're doing things? How could we do it better? But like, let's not brainstorm solutions at all for the first 2 hours, and let's just complain about everything. And then that's the first 2 hours. And then the second 2 hours, we categorize all of those and then start brainstorming solutions with the people that need to brainstorm solutions for. So we kind of assign different tasks and different things to different people. And then from that, we start ironing out, okay, well, like, how could that actually be better? Is this like, are we missing a job? That one time, I think that was actually an answer. We had a whole bunch of complaints about HR, and it just turns out we were missing a job in HR, and it was a really important link. So different really good ideas tend to come out of the TAO, and you'll be given plenty of notice for those kind of things, but it would be lovely to have you out to that. As well as online, we have our Facebook volunteer page. We have our, it's different than our Facebook public Doctors for Doctors and Nurses for Nurses page. It's DFD NFN volunteers, and just posting there, kind of trying to support each other as much as possible, especially if you're looking to branch out or looking to kind of get your hands in something new. That would be a good place to just post an idea or a thought or a question. Hey, does anyone know anybody in that? And I'd be surprised to see what you get. And as well, we have our LinkedIn and our Twitter, but those are a little bit less active because we're still figuring those out. And then our newsletter that comes out every once in a while. And we also have our, we do these things called upcasts. It's like a half podcast, half update. And we go through, this is a part of how we run everything in our organization, but we believe that transparency is essential to keep everyone engaged and accountable.
Okay.
And how I particularly like the way I can get everyone else to hold me accountable is to be transparent and share all of the major decisions that are being made at a time. And so every 2 weeks we release it's like a 5 to 15 minute, it's usually around 10 though,
Okay.
kind of podcast or update on YouTube. That's just us talking through all of the major important decisions that have been made and why they were made, about the organization.
Okay.
Only 2 rules in it, which are like no lies and no omissions of truth.
Okay.
And there's 3 main reasons behind it. One is because nobody, from my understanding, has ever documented how to actually start a charity like on this scale before. And so I think it's just important that somebody documents it. And the second one is to kind of create culture within our group and I guess keep everybody engaged. And then the third one is just updating everyone so that they can do their work. Because sometimes really important decisions affect, how you do things in what you're going to do for the next couple of weeks. And if that's the case, you hear something and then you can just ask the manager right away and you'll be off to the races.
Okay.
In terms of our structure and governance, we actually applying for a status next week.
Okay.
I'm going to print it out in a couple of days, which is rather lengthy, but it's good. And we did that ourselves, which is really impressive, and took a really long time. I didn't know how much it costed to not do it yourself, but it's very expensive.
Okay.
Yeah. So up until now, if you've seen this bottom bar on our webpage, that just means that we are technically a special project of GPN. So I'm a board member of GPN. That's the charity that I went to Tanzania with. Yeah. And I had Doctors for Doctors going at the time. And what we decided to do was come together, and GPN was helping, basically nurturing us and supporting us as we were growing in a lot of different ways. But now I think the bird is ready to leave the nest. And so we are branching off and forming our own charity on.
That's exciting.
It's all positive all around, which is nice. And they've been really supportive as well. So it's going to be exciting to just have our own sets of rules and everything like that. So that's how we have our charitable status. That's how we give tax receipts through GPN. And when people donate, they technically donate right now through GPN.
Correct. Yeah.
But that will hopefully no longer be the case in 6 to 8 months.
Okay.
Our core team has about 5 people right now, and we're looking to expand. Actually, I would say right now it's more around 10. So we've expanded a bit already, but again, we're trying to increase that to, I would say, 20 by the end of the year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And our core team would be, I would say, managers, basically managers, people who are working with 3 other people. Our whole volunteer team right now is around 50. We're hoping to push that up to 100 by the end of the year. And I think we will, because our HR process is very solid, as you can see. So we are in the process of looking to expand. This is our organizational chart right now, and I'll take you over to this left side here in Canadian operations with Mike. So everything that we do flows through GPN, and on Canadian operations, that says strategic operations. And that branch of everything there is those are our core functions as an organization. So our HR team, our legal team, financial systems, so like accounting, that kind of stuff. Also, we have our director of investments / like American expansion. We're going to be opening, if we can get charitable status down in America, they have many more grants in support of Nicaragua. I think particularly because of their history in Nicaragua.
Correct.
So they're trying to give back a little bit.
Okay.
So that would be really good for us to expand down. So that's a very big deal. As well, we do have somebody working. Somebody with a lot of experience working on like a Nicaraguan collaboration project. getting us together with different organizations, kind of that person that pushes forward future partnerships, that kind of thing in strategic areas and directions. Then we have our outreach side of things in Canadian operations. So those are things like events, communications, and also a branch that we call Special Connections.
Okay.
And then at the bottom, we have our fundraising. So these are grants, and we actually have fundraising systems. So these are, particularly right now, most of our fundraising has been through, mostly I would say like the campaign, friends and family, volunteers, kind of more random donations. And that's been a lot of work, and it's not the most sustainable option because you can only rely on friends and family for so long before you have no friends and family.
Yeah, exactly.
So what we're doing is more targeting corporate social responsibility kind of markets. Okay. And so we are appealing to different businesses, different corporations that want to and actually like kind of need to give to different charities. And so we are kind of working through that and making a lot of fundraising calls. And we have a database around that now, and we have people doing the fundraising.
Okay.
Any fundraising that you know of or any ways that can get us more funds, absolutely. Let us know. We're always open to it. I would say the biggest issue with fundraising is that people always think it's someone else's job, which is really upsetting when everybody thinks that, because then it never gets done.
Right.
So if there's anything you can think of course, let us know. Over on Bo's side of things, and this is where you will be working, we have our health and social policy on kind of, we have 4 key roles, and that's one of them. The second one is monitoring and evaluations. And what that does is it looks at basically when we start a program, how are we going to measure if it's successful or not? And to be able to do that, that has to be implemented into the design of the program from the first place. So that he's also kind of like a program designer in that way.
Okay.
And that's Paul. He's a graduate from Oxford, so he's way over in London. London, England.
Okay.
Yeah, not Ontario, not your London. And then we also have our data science manager, and that's Anna. That's who I think you'll be working with. Okay. Now that's what she does is organize very large sets of data in different programs to get information and essentially display and build awareness around where we need to go next, where certain areas are lacking in different types of care or she just built a database right now that's really impressive around where all of the current Canadian charities are in Nicaragua, where they're working out of and what they're doing. And we can display it in bar graphs, and we can display it in an actual interactive map. And so this is a very useful tool for us, but also when we publish it and we can write about it and develop insight around these more complicated sets of data as we add to them. And basically, increase awareness, increase hopefully donations at some point, that kind of thing. Right. And I think that it really strengthens our programs and our direction, our strategic direction as well. And then, of course, we have our programs manager. And so we have people in programs right now working with our local partners who are responsible for contacting them, following up, doing all that kind of stuff. And we're just looking for the person to manage that. We're looking for a pretty specific person, so we understand it's going to take us a while to find.
That's the one that I saw posted.
Yeah. And and then my role used to be more of like a director managerial role, but because that doesn't really make a lot of sense for the founder, I'm handing some of that stuff off, and what I'm going to be mainly focusing on are fundraising. Because I think I could be a very powerful fundraiser and partnerships in here and in Nicaragua. And so I'm spending a lot of my time doing things like that.
Okay. How many times a year do you find yourself on average in Nicaragua?
Hoping to go down once a year.
Okay.
Yeah, minimum are people from our organization go down once a year. Yeah. And I'd like to be there as well. Yeah. And I think I'm finally stable enough and settled enough to make that happen.
Right.
Yeah. So, coming on as a volunteer in the organization and kind of what's next. So today, there's not tons of homework. It's all very easy. But it's just that one usually stands out. It's just a survey. So how you like to be managed, what your skill set is, that kind of stuff. And then just taking you through more of the, and hopefully giving you some more details about your role by the end of this weekend. All right. And there is a contract that we send out to every volunteer. That contract is going to have in it all of the things that we're going to go through. We just like to go through everything multiple times because we like to be as clear as possible and mostly answer questions and as much as possible as well. Now, in the next 2 months, that's really where I would say volunteers come on. They kind of see, they get to see us in action and how we work and what we're all about. And we get to see them in action and how they work and what they're all about. And if those two things are still very positive at the end of the day in 2 months, then we work together and that's great. We just like to build a formal space where we're going to reevaluate that with everybody after a few months. So expect that. And ideally, volunteer roles are indefinite, where we surround ourselves with people in common belief systems. And we understand that everybody coming into a volunteer position here wants to grow in a lot of different ways. And we want to support as many of those as we possibly can, if not all of them. Which means that it's not unexpected that volunteers may change roles. And that's totally okay with us. And whether it's changing roles, kind of making more decisions and getting more involved, or making less decisions and being less involved, it's totally okay with us, but we love it when people stay because they believe in the cause.
Absolutely.
So just to take you through really quickly the benefits of being a volunteer. I mean, at the end of the day, work towards a world where every person has reasonable access to healthcare. That's really important to, I think that originally attracts everybody to get to where we are now. And a lot of people are coming in to gain hands-on experience in the Canadian charitable sector because we are a startup. We are going through these things and being very open and honest about them in ways that a lot of organizations don't do. And they're very confusing. I think on purpose, although, there's no proof. But it is very difficult at times and very confusing at times. And we're just very open about that. So it's a big learning opportunity for people coming in from the outside. And ultimately, you're going to be operating with a lot of autonomy and respect in your work once you feel that, once you feel trained and all that kind of stuff, of course. And ideally grow your professional network. And that's things like through the Facebook page, posting, like, hey, does anyone know anyone here? That becomes very important. Ideally, we're building a community of fun and a space of community and fun social events. And that you can be open to challenging yourself and developing within the organization in new ways. Like, you don't have to fit yourself into structure that we propose, but you can say, hey, I'm really good at this, but nothing you have supports that. So how about I just build this and we try it out? And I think it'll be good for the organization because of this, this, and this. And I think it'll be really good for me because of this, this, and this. And I think that would be wonderful. And we've done that multiple times with great people and had it work very well. Some people, on the other hand, really like the structure, and they feel like without the structure that they're just going to be wasting their time. And so we'll give you structure if you need it, but if you don't like it, then we will not give it. And then, ultimately, we're all very low drama and solutions oriented. And this is probably one of the biggest ones for me, volunteer alongside a hardworking, low drama and solutions oriented team.
I got that sense.
I love working with the people that I get to work with in this organization because on a lot of levels, they're all better than me. And that keeps me accountable, and that keeps me very engaged and very focused. And so that's just something that I have a lot of fun with. Ensuring high quality work with great expectations comes the need to ensure high quality work. And this is that kind of, I don't even know if I want to say this because it's kind of so cheesy, but that circle of respect or something.
Yeah, I get it.
Never said it before, but it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
So if you ever need to leave, just let your supervisor know within at least 2 weeks of kind of a window. That's just so we've had it before where volunteers have had to just kind of pick up and leave because they didn't know to let us know. And that created a lot of wasted time of theirs.
Right.
Because they had built these projects that weren't able to get handed off. And then we just lost them because nobody knew where they were at, and it was just quicker to start again. And so I would say to ensure that none of your work gets lost or lost in translation as well, just make sure that we have a window where we can hand off the role to somebody else coming in.
Right.
That's definitely one of a really important point. And then in terms of disciplinary action, we do have standards where if they're broken, we do have a disciplinary action kind of process and procedure. And this is something we go through with everybody because we are volunteers, because we are all professionals. It's important that we all follow like very basic standards. And so these are the 3 basic standards that we came up with. The first one, create high quality work in a timely manner in accordance with your role. These are all going to be things that you agree on. You're going to agree on your role. You're going to agree on your timely manner. And you're going to agree on ideally like what the final product should look like. And so we are hoping that everybody has the capacity for informed consent within those dimensions. And so don't radically overcommit yourself to anything, and just let us know if anything is kind of if anything doesn't seem like it's going to fit right as soon as possible, so we can plan around it. Attend more than 50% of meetings in a given period and never miss 2 in a row. That is a standard because, of course, you can, if you let us know ahead of time and plan accordingly, of course, you can miss 2 in a row. Like people can go on vacation and this kind of stuff. But it's more just if people are counting on you to show up and you don't show up, then you end up wasting people's time, and that's very upsetting for the volunteer base. And then ultimately respect everyone inside and outside of the organization. This is our just be a good person clause, which I think is fun. I'm happy we have it in. There are standards that, of course, like there are extreme circumstances. So things like racism, bullying, judging people based on their profession or their background for how much they know. These things just like aren't acceptable in any circumstance. And if we ever saw it, we haven't yet. But if we, hopefully we don't attract racist people.
Well, I was going to say,
as a charity. It's a Nicaraguan charity. But it's something that if we ever saw, we would just let that person go. That's I think hopefully very given. Now the other one is if those 3 kind of things that I was talking about last time, if one of those is broken or not really respected, what we'll do is just send an email, or it'll be a conversation, and just say, hey, this was one of the main 3 things that we all agreed to. I feel you've broken it in this way. Can you not do that anymore? Then that would be it.
Okay.
If it either just kept on happening, or if you never got back to us, we would wait a month, and then we would just send an official email that just says, hey, we're letting you go as a volunteer. When you want to become more engaged again, like, please let us know, because we liked working with you and all that kind of stuff. And that's that. So that's the almost the end of the presentation. The very last slide here, it was just giving me a hiccup. This one's really important. I went through this one a lot because we expect a lot of things from our volunteers, and we hope that volunteers expect a lot of things out of us. So just so you know what you can expect out of Bo and what you can expect out of Anna and whoever else you work with that in the managerial kind of department within us, is that they are going to bring their best every day, that they would never expect you to do something that they would not do themselves, that they are going to communicate their expectations very, very clearly for you. And if you have any questions around that, never hesitate to ask. Clarification is wonderful. We love it. and ultimately that they understand that you want to have fun just as much as you want to help people. Your personal and professional development is actually an essential part of our work culture because, again, like I think it's just because it comes down to it's a volunteer organization. We need as many incentives as possible to produce the best work that we can, and that is a big one of them. And then that they will advocate for your best interest in different meetings, and to make sure that your voice and your opinion and your thoughts are always heard. And that's really important, I guess, just for you to know that it's their job to represent your thoughts and opinions around your specialty and your background that you're coming to us with. And that ultimately they'll create a safe space for you and for everybody that you work with. Any questions?
That's a pretty thorough presentation. Yeah. Yeah, I know.
I know we got through it really fast.
Yeah.
And so I know it's a lot of information at once, but any even questions about the history, or questions about the students, or about our current structure? These are totally welcome.
No, I think that was all really thorough. And I mean, much needed there, because I do know there's a huge age range of people too. So, I'm laughing because half of the reason why I pursued volunteer, like I did volunteer back when I was in my undergrad, but having not done it for 10 years, it's interesting because, you all of a sudden work and organize in a huge I work for St. Joseph's, so huge organization that is dedicated to healthcare, that is dedicated to, improve people's lives. For some reason, it can be such a negative culture. So as there was something missing, I myself traveling, and Africa, so cliche. You go, you don't come back from Africa the same. And I went to Namibia, and I was in South Africa and some orphanages.
Okay, because I was in Botswana, so I was close by.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I didn't make it. I met a lot of Australians and one Tronatonian who came from Tanzania and Kenya, and then across. But I was there for a month. They were there for about. When I met them in Namibia, they were probably going across the country for, I think it was like a month prior to me. So anyway, when we met in Namibia, and it was just things that were out of my comfort zone. And then when you go to, same in Namibia, like there's nothing, there's no healthcare, it literally is like Bushman. It's just a whole different world, obviously. And then when you are in South America, you're like, okay, this is actually like a lot of these cities are like home, but equality. And at the same time, I was doing a master's in a very social equality area. So I was focusing on healthcare leadership and how in Africa, none of the healthcare organizations were led by females, like there wasn't the same opportunities, blah, blah. So I just came back a year from Africa in last December. So it's been a year. And so that part has been that, there's just something missing when you come back, that I didn't see in my job. There's, it's almost, and of course I'm so generalizing, but there's this kind of culture of people coming to work to come. There's not this greater good. So as you see the passion, as you discuss, as you're talking, it's been really humbling. So yeah, I appreciate your journey, because it's similar in the sense that it's been something that's been later on, that you don't realize when you travel, like how much it's going to change you. Especially for you, because here you are dedicating your time. Yeah,
that's one of those things.
Yeah. So I guess I just more so was thinking along the lines of how you see me fitting into the organization, if you call it that. And yeah, just because I know it's always easy to see the structure and, you know, see these positions of what people are doing, but where you kind of see me jumping into things.
I know because I wasn't the one who gave you the initial interview.
Yes.
That I don't want to say too much for Bo.
Okay.
But
So
I know he's excited to bring you on to that side of things. I don't know exactly where he sees the best fit. I had heard rumors of data with Anna, so I just give reference to that throughout. Okay. But I would say definitely I'll put you in touch with Bo right after this.
That's probably really my only question was, where do I go? And as simple of an answer as Bo will contact you is great. Because it has been a long time, and that's completely not, like, it's been crazy. Yeah. And I have been doing a lot of traveling, so. But and something that I don't want to stop, but I definitely have run out of time and money. So
for sure,
I was going somewhere every month.
Yeah,
and also my boss was really great, so I didn't have the vacation time. So many bosses will start to go, okay, that's great that you're taking unpaid, but at the same time, why am I paying you if you're able to go away every month? So she was great for me for a couple of years, and then it's just kind of one of those things. Okay, now we need some stability.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's basically all I wanted, was some kind of structure into knowing when I leave here is, okay, great, because I forgot.
Very important
about Bo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Usually with more people, we bring in like their managers and this kind of stuff.
Okay.
But Bo is out of town.
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff. So I will get him to contact you as soon as possible.
Great.
Nishima, do you have any questions? If you're
No, I don't.
No questions? Okay.
No.
Well, thank you again for meeting with us yesterday. And you're free to hang up if you'd like, or stick around if you'd just like to chat and hang out and learn more. But right now, I think it's going to be a very informal, non-structured time. So.
Okay, sounds good. But I'll keep listening for a bit, and I'll show you those.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrew.
You're welcome.
Okay.
I'm just going to stop.
In which area is she going to be working on or in?
I